Hi friends, welcome to this Duolingo English Test Essentials video. This video has all of the most important lessons you need to succeed on the Duolingo test. This video has lessons on all of the different question types on this exam, plus some other lessons to give you some extra tips and strategies. So let's get started. The first lesson is all about the newest question type, and it's called interactive listening. Hi friends, so there's a new question type on the Duolingo English test and it's called interactive listening. On the test, it looks like this. Since this is a new question type, I'm sure you have lots of questions about it. So in this video, I'm going to teach you about the key points and give you some really good strategies to do well on this question. And at the end, I've got some practice questions for you. But very quickly, before we start that, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from DETready.com, and we're here to help you prepare for the Duolingo English test. So if you're looking for some tools to help you prepare, that's a great website to go to. Let's jump right into this new listening question. First, I'll go over some key points to help you understand what it's all about. For this question type, you have to participate in an academic conversation. The key word here is participate. So as you go through this question type, you are one of the people in the conversation. I believe this makes this question very engaging and much more realistic than the other listening questions that are on like the IELTS or TOEFL, where you just listen as a passive listener. In this question type, you are active and you are participating in the conversation. And your job is to listen and select the correct answers. As you can see here, there will be 5 multiple choice options and you choose the correct answer. And in total, you'll answer between 5 and 6 questions. And you get 4 minutes to complete them. So basically on the exam, it looks like this. And as you go through the conversation, you're listening to a person and then answering multiple choice questions based on the conversation. And another key thing you need to know is that you can only listen once to each part of the conversation, because once you've moved on to the next part, the listening actually appears as text. So you only get to listen once, which does make this question kind of difficult. But the text appearing like this is a really good thing because you can refer back to the text, which can help you to answer the following questions. So there are some positives and negatives. Next up, the listening part of this question type contributes to your comprehension and conversation scores. And after the conversation, you have to write a short summary. After you've finished the listening questions, you can reread the conversation and then click next to go on to the summary, just like this. I will discuss this summary with some strategies in my next video. But for this one, we're going to focus just on the listening part of this question type. So as this question type is a bit complex, let's take a look at a process you can use to answer it effectively. And the first thing you want to do is to always take your time and read about the situation carefully. This is really important because it provides the first context of the conversation. And you'll use this context throughout to understand the listening and to choose the correct multiple choice answers. The very first thing you have to do is pick an option to begin the conversation. I think that most conversations will start like this, where you actually start the conversation by choosing the correct answer rather than listening first, just like in this example here. So you pick the best option to start the conversation, and then you listen to the other person. The other person could be a friend or a professor. Then you go through the whole conversation, listening and selecting the most appropriate responses. You'll have to do this between 5 and 6 times. And as you're going through, the listening file turns into text and you can see the correct answers. And this is very important because after you've completed the conversation, you don't want to click next right away. You want to go through and read the conversation again thoroughly. This is so important. Make sure you don't click next right away. Instead, you do read the whole conversation, because once you've clicked next, you go on to the summary and you can't go back. It's vital that you read the whole conversation. That's a basic process of this question type from start to finish. You do have 4 minutes to complete it, so take your time and use the whole 4 minutes. Even if you finish the listening questions early, go through and take your time and read the conversation. Okay, so that's the process. Now let's take a look at some strategies you can use to make sure you answer all of the questions correctly. I already mentioned this, but I will say it again. Make sure you read the situation carefully and understand the context. By understanding the context clearly, you'll be able to eliminate the wrong options as you go through the conversation. It'll make your life a lot easier. A good way to understand context is to identify keywords in the scenario. For example, let's look at this one here. You're a student in a journalism class. After today's lecture on reporting, you approach your professor to ask them more about what it means to cultivate sources. What would be some of the keywords here to help you understand this context? For me, the keywords are reporting and cultivating sources. You can use those keywords, reporting and cultivating sources, to help you to identify the correct answers throughout the conversation. They will likely come up, or synonyms of these words will likely appear throughout the conversation. The next strategy is to pay attention to the relationship between the speakers. Is it between a student and a student, or a student and a professor? This is very important because the way you speak to your friend or your professor is very different. With a friend, it's going to be very casual, and with a professor, it will likely be quite formal. So for example, again, in this one here, you are talking to your professor. So if you are provided with very informal options in the multiple choice questions, you can eliminate them because you will not speak informally to your professor. My next tip is to identify distractors and eliminate them from your options. Distractors are incorrect options in the multiple choice that are designed to distract you. Distractors could include unrelated topics, exaggerated statements, or answers that seem plausible but don't fit the context of the conversation. As you go through the conversation, try to eliminate all the distractors first so you can just focus on the most relevant options. That will save you some time and make your life a lot easier. Tip 4 is to look out for synonyms. When it comes to listening questions on any test, the Duolingo, IELTS or TOEFL, synonyms always play a very important role. It's not often that you'll hear the exact words repeated throughout the conversation. Instead, you'll listen to synonyms and they'll help you to choose the correct answer. A really good example of this is actually in the very first question of the example conversation we've been looking at here. So the scenario says, you're a student in a journalism class. And the very first option here, we have, "Hi Professor, I had a question about something you mentioned in today's lecture." Of course, class and lecture are synonymous. So Duolingo here did not use a repeated word. Instead, they used a synonym to test your understanding. This is very common in all types of listening tests, IELTS, TOEFL, and the DET. That was quite an easy example, but there is actually a more difficult example in this conversation. Let me show you. In the next example, we had the synonyms developing relationships and networking. That's a much more difficult example to notice, but it does show you how synonyms will be used throughout the listening questions. So you have to pay attention and watch out for synonyms. My next tip is to read the previous responses in the conversation. As I mentioned, the text does appear as the conversation is going through. So if you are stuck, I highly recommend that you read the previous responses because there might be some clues in the previous responses. So if you're not sure, make sure you go back into the conversation and read all the text, looking for some clues. And my last tip is quite an obvious one, but it is to make sure you answer all the questions and guess if you need to. Even if you're not sure, please take a guess because you could get lucky and choose the right answer. Even if you're wrong, the answers do appear so you can read them and get ready for your summary. Okay, so those were some strategies for you. Now let's do a practice question. I've prepared one practice question for you with the correct time limit, so give it a go and let me know if you found it easy or difficult below in the comments. I will also ask you to write a summary here, but I haven't taught you about that because I will teach you in my next video. And if you want to practice in a more interactive way, head over to detready.com because we've got over 300 questions ready for you to practice. You can go through them just like on the real exam, and you can check your answers immediately. We have 300 interactive listening questions and we're adding more each week, so that's at detready.com. But anyway, let's do a practice question now. Let me know if you found it easy or difficult below in the comments.
That sounds like a great idea. What do you think the main focus of our study group should be? Those are excellent aspects to focus on. We could also work on developing our arguments and incorporating evidence more effectively. We could start each meeting by discussing specific writing challenges we're facing, then work together on exercises and share feedback on each other's writing. You're welcome. I'm looking forward to our study group meetings. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help with planning or preparation.
So how was that? Was that easy or difficult? Write below in the comments. And also, if you're watching this part of the video, put a heart emoji to let me know you've watched it all the way to the end. And now I recommend you watch this speaking video next because it will help you to describe a photo really, really well, which is hard. So I'll see you in this video and thanks for watching. Bye. Hi friends, Teacher Luke here. So there is actually a new writing question on the Duolingo English test. It's called Summarize the Conversation, and it comes right after the interactive listening. It looks like this on the test. First, you do the listening part where you participate in an academic conversation. You then do the summary, where you summarize in writing everything you listened to and did in the academic conversation. And that's what this video is about. Here, I'm going to teach you all about the key points and give you lots of strategies to do well on the summary part of the interactive listening question. A lot of students have asked me to make this video, so I really hope it's helpful. But very quickly, before we start, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Teacher Luke from detready.com. If you're looking for some tools to help you prepare for the Duolingo English test, I recommend visiting our website, especially our practice platform, where you can practice this new interactive listening and summary question, and you can check your answers immediately. And of course, we have lots of practice questions for all of the question types on the Duolingo test. But anyway, back to this video. Let's start off by talking about the key points of this summary question. So as I mentioned, it does appear immediately after the interactive listening. And your job is to write a short summary of the conversation in just 75 seconds. So I'm sure you're thinking, 75 seconds, how can I write a summary in that short amount of time? Well, don't worry, I have some strategies I'll show you later on. After the listening is done, you are able to read the conversation before you begin writing. Now that's really important. So after you've done the interactive listening, like you can see on the screen now, you are able, if you have time left, to go back to the start of the conversation and read it through. And I highly recommend you do that because that will give you lots and lots of ideas for your summary. And of course, it will remind you of what was said during the conversation. But remember, you can't take notes. One of the main rules on the Duolingo English test is that you are not allowed to use a pen and paper, so you can't take any notes. That does make it harder, but Duolingo are very concerned about test security and making sure no one can cheat, so you're not allowed to use any pen or paper during the test. This summary contributes to your literacy and production subscores, and the summary is scored based on the production subscore criteria. A lot of test takers I speak to find it really hard to get a high score in production, so this is another question type you can use to boost your production score. And it will be scored in the same way as the other writing questions using the production score criteria you can see here. The first 2 points are concerned with grammar. The following 2 are all to do with your vocabulary. The next point is all to do how well you answered the question. This is called task relevance. And the last one is concerned with how much you're able to write in a short amount of time, also known as fluency. So that's the scoring criteria. It's the same for all the other writing questions on this exam as well. Now let's think about some different strategies you can use to answer the summary as well as you can. The first one is really important, and that is before you finish the listening part of this question type, you should read the whole conversation and the situation carefully. So once again, once you've finished the listening part, it looks like this, and you can read the conversation through fully. But I want to stress that you don't just want to read the conversation, you want to really focus on the situation, because you can easily write your first and even maybe your second sentence just based on the situation provided. Actually, that's exactly what Duolingo do in their sample answer. Let me show you what I mean. So the situation says, you are a student in a journalism class. After today's lecture on reporting, you approach your professor to ask them more about what it means to cultivate sources. Then if you skip through this all the way to the end where Duolingo provide a sample summary, you can see here that the first 2 sentences are basically paraphrasing the situation. I asked my professor a question after class today. I asked them to explain the concept of cultivating sources as a reporter. So the first 2 sentences in this example was basically a paraphrase of the situation. To paraphrase, you typically just keep the ideas exactly the same, but you change the sentence structure and maybe the verb choice or nouns in the sentences. And that's why I'm saying it's very important that you read the situation carefully, because this will likely be the first and maybe even the second sentence in your summary. So that's my first tip. My second tip is also very important, which is to study opening phrases before you begin your summary. As you know already, you only have 75 seconds to complete this task. That's obviously not long at all. So by studying opening phrases, you'll know how to begin, and that will save you valuable seconds. So what are some opening phrases? Well, let me show you here. So here are 8 opening phrases you can use. Of course, you need to be careful and select the right one depending on the conversation you listen to, but a lot of these can be used for any situation. Again, let's take a look at the sample answer from Duolingo. The opening phrase Duolingo used was, "I asked my professor a question after class today." So I strongly suggest that you study these opening phrases and that you practice typing them quickly. Like I said, that will save you valuable seconds on the test. On top of that, you'll know exactly how to begin, and a lot of students struggle with actually getting started on these writing questions. So don't let that be you, and learn these opening statements. Remember that during the listening part of this question type, you were participating in a conversation, so you were acting as if you were one of the people talking. So when you do the summary, use the word I, and I recommend you use the active voice because that's a lot easier and a lot more natural when you're talking about yourself. Just as in the Duolingo sample, I asked my professor a question after class today. Okay, next up, you want to write paragraphs, not bullet points. Since this is an English exam, this one should be obvious, but just to clarify, you want to write full paragraphs and use full sentences. Don't use bullet points. Try to make your answer as complete as possible. And number 6 is to follow a simple structure. I've come up with a simple structure you can use for most of the conversations. It's not perfect because the conversations in the listening part can vary. But if you study and follow this kind of structure, then you should be able to write more in the limited time you have. Like I said, it's not a perfect, foolproof structure, but it can give you some ideas of what to write and help you to prepare. Step 1 of the structure, you could write, who did you talk to and what about? Remember the opening phrases I showed you. For example, I had a conversation with my professor about the low grade I got in my English writing class. Step 2 is to go into more detail. Think about what were the main ideas or suggestions throughout the conversation. My professor suggested that I use helpful grammar and writing resources on the university's website because these online tools can help me improve my advanced grammar and teach me how to organize my academic essays. So we've got the opening, some more detail, and the last part is all about the outcome. I believe in most of the conversations there will be an outcome. Basically, what did you say you were going to do during the conversation? For example, I agreed with my professor and said that I'd begin using these online resources right away. So that's some basic information and some strategies to do the summary well. If you haven't watched my interactive listening video yet, I recommend you do so right here because the summary and the listening are very closely linked. So I'll see you in this video. Hi friends, in this video you're going to learn how to do really well on the vocabulary questions on the Duolingo English test. For these questions, you need to select and click on the real English words, like this. You click on the real ones and you ignore the ones that are not real. A question I get asked a lot is, what is a real word? Well, don't overthink it. A real word is simply a word with a meaning. For example, this word here means this. Maybe a more difficult word would be this one, dismay, which means to have deep concern about something. Both of these are real words because they have a meaning. Some words which are not real or fake might be these ones here. We have vivality, troven. These words, they look and sound like real English words, but they are not real because they have no meaning. So just to keep it simple, a real word is a word which has a meaning attached to it. So now you know what Duolingo mean by a real word. Now let's take a look at some tips to help you succeed on vocabulary question types. Number 1, don't guess. Only select the words you know. The reason why I say don't guess is because it's actually impossible to guess. If you look at these words again, these could be real English words because they do follow the correct English spelling rules and the pronunciation rules as well. But they're not real because there's no meaning attached to them. So it's actually impossible to guess. So my first suggestion is for you to only select the words you actually know are real because you know the meaning of them. Also, don't select all of the words, because you will lose points if you choose words which are not real. So don't guess, just choose the words you know are real English words. All word categories are considered real. For example, swim, swam, swims. So all verb categories, like in this example, but also all different words, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, any word can come up in the list. So go through it carefully and select all the words which have a meaning. Number 3 is to build your vocabulary. The best way to prepare for these question types is to keep learning new words. You can learn new words by going through topic-related vocabulary. For example, here, you might think of a topic like technology and then learn lots of words based on that topic. Another way to build your vocabulary is to learn affixes. Affixes are parts of words which come at the start or at the end of a word. For example, a prefix comes at the start, like re, dis, over, inter. And suffixes come at the end, like shun, ment, ij, al. Learning vocab related to topics or with affixes is a good way. You can also study large word lists to test yourself, such as the ones you can find on the Oxford Learner's Dictionary here. This is a fantastic word list you can go through just to recap or learn new words. Another way to prepare for this question type is to practice with a time limit. For both of these question types, you don't get long to go through the lists and choose the real words. So being able to practice with a time limit and improve your speed is important. For this, I recommend you visit our website, detready.com, and practice with our practice platform. Like I said, you can practice with the correct time limit and check your answers immediately. Also, we have a dictionary function so you can learn the words you did not know. You can learn the definition, and by clicking the speaker, you can learn the pronunciation. Because a lot of times when someone learns a new word, they just learn the spelling and how it's written out. They don't learn how it's pronounced. But of course, English pronunciation and spelling rules don't match always, so it's very important for you to learn the pronunciation of new words you're learning. Again, our practice platform on DET Ready will help you with that. Next tip is to always take your time and double check your answers. And you can change your answer if needed. Even though the time limit is quite short, it's still really important for you to double check. Even for me, when I do this question type, I always have to double check because I do miss words. So take your time, double check, and you can change your answers as many times as you want to, as long as it's within the time limit. So those were some tips. Now let's jump into some practice. That's the practice. If you're still watching this video, put a heart emoji below in the comments to let me know. I'm always wondering who watches these videos all the way to the end. Now I recommend you watch this video here because it will help you with your Duolingo test speaking. That's very important. So I'll see you in this video. Bye. Hi friends, welcome to this Duolingo English test lesson, and today we're going to look at the read and complete question type. You know, the one where you've got to fill in the blanks. On the test, it looks like this. And in my opinion, this is one of the hardest question types on this Duolingo English test because it requires you to read a paragraph and understand the context and the topic. And then it requires you to use your grammatical and vocabulary knowledge in order to complete the gaps correctly. And that's not easy at all. But I hope in today's video, I'll help you to do this better. And I'm going to help you by doing three things. Firstly, I'll talk about the key points of this question type to give you a better understanding what it's all about. Then I've got some tips for you. And at the end, I've prepared 10 practice questions for you to practice and check your answers to. Understanding, learning, and practice is a great way to prepare for this Duolingo English test. And we will start in 1 second, but if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from detready.com. If you're looking for tools to help you prepare for the Duolingo English test, that's the website to go to. We have courses and a practice platform to help you learn and practice. A lot of students who have been successful on the Duolingo English test have used our website to get a good score. Okay, anyway, back to this lesson. Let's get started with the key points of this question type to help you understand what it's all about. So you get this question type between 4 and 6 times on the test, just like most of the other question types as well. You have 3 minutes to read the paragraph and complete. The timer will start as soon as you're given this question, so there's no preparation time. These passages are not that long. Actually, they're not very long at all, usually much less than 100 words. And normally you'll have around 8 or 10 words to complete. There is a variety of topics. Some are very general and others are more academic. So some of the topics you might find very easy if they're very general, or you might find more challenging if they're more academic. On top of this, the Duolingo English test is an adaptive test, which means as you go through the test, if you're doing well, the questions will get harder. So the topics might get harder as you go through the test, but don't worry, if that happens, it could mean you're doing very well. The first letter or letters of every word will be shown. You're not guessing the words completely. You should use those first letters to help you. And this question type contributes to your literacy and comprehension scores. So those are the key points of this question type. Now let's move on to some tips to help you score better when you do your test. In my opinion, the first thing you should do is read the whole passage through once before you start typing out any words. It will be helpful for you to get a good understanding of the context before you start typing out the words. You should also pay close attention to the first and last sentences, because usually there are not any incomplete words in these passages. Look here at this example. So if you pay close attention to the first and last sentences, it will give you a really good idea of the context and then perhaps help you with what vocabulary to use when you complete the blanks. Another thing is that you should use American spelling only for this question type. For the other question types, you can use American or British spelling, but for this question type, you need to use American spelling only. So if you're more comfortable with British spelling, like I am, then you should practice American spelling before you take the test. Like I said, on the other question types, you can use British, but for this one only, you need to use American spelling. And use the context and your grammatical knowledge to help you complete the gaps. The context refers to the topic. So, for example, if the topic is about sports, then use the sports vocabulary you have to help you. Next is about grammar knowledge. Should the word be a verb, an adjective? Is it in the past tense? Is it in the future? Use your grammatical knowledge and the context to help you complete the gaps. Don't get stressed out if you don't know 1 or 2 of the words. The Duolingo test scoring criteria is very sophisticated. They don't mark you on a right or wrong evaluation, rather they use more of a sliding scale which determines how well you're doing. So if you get one word wrong or two words wrong, you won't get 0 for this question type. So if you can't do one or two of the words in the passage, don't get too stressed out, just complete the ones you do know. Next one is to practice every day. In my opinion, the more you practice this question type, the more comfortable you'll feel doing it. Of course, for this type of question, practicing frequently would be really helpful for you because it'll make you feel much more comfortable with this question type. If you visit detready.com, you can practice this on our practice platform, where you can practice similar passages as on the real test and practice them within the time limit set. You can also check your answers immediately to see how well you're doing. I think this website's very helpful. There is a link down here below in the description. But if you would rather just practice here on YouTube, that's fine. That's what this video is going to do now. I've made 10 practice questions for you for this read and complete question. They'll go from easy to difficult. So number 1 will be fairly easy, but number 10, in my opinion, will be really hard. And after each question, you can check your answers. Okay, then, well, let's jump into the practice. Here is practice question number 1. Okay guys, well done for finishing this whole video. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please give it a big thumbs up and put a heart emoji below in the comments to let me know that you watched the whole video. Now I recommend you watch this speaking video next because it will help you to describe a photo well, which is really challenging. Anyway, I'll see you in this video. Bye. Hi guys, I'm Teacher Luke, an expert Duolingo English Test teacher, and today you're going to practice the dictation question type. So for this video, I've prepared 35 sample dictation questions for you, and your job is to listen and write down what you hear. Of course, I will show you the answers as well. But before we start the 35 tests, let's go over some of the key points of this question type. Okay, so the first key point you need to know is that on the real test for the dictation question type, you have 1 minute to complete it. That means you have to listen and write everything down within 1 minute. And you will get this question type between 3 and 7 times in the test. Your job is to write down exactly what you hear. You can't make up the words. You have to listen and write down everything you hear exactly. And of course, you must use correct spelling and punctuation. And lastly, the dictation question type on the Duolingo English test goes towards your conversation and comprehension subscores. So just like I said, the dictation question type contributes towards your conversation and comprehension subscores. So if these are areas you're having a hard time getting a high score in, this video is going to be super helpful for you. I've prepared 35 different sample dictation tests for you. Your job is to listen and write down exactly what you hear. When you're doing these sample tests, I highly recommend that you actually type out what you hear. You can write them in the comments or on a Microsoft Word file. But definitely practice typing out your answers because you actually have to type out quite quickly when you do the real test. Some of my sample tests are easy, some are difficult, and they've been mixed up so they're in mixed order. And like I said, make sure you type out what you hear and let me know your final score in the comments below. Okay then, well, let's get started.
English is the world language for diplomacy, commerce, and sport. English is the world language for diplomacy, commerce, and sport. English is the world language for diplomacy, commerce, and sport. For a long time, people have known about the dangers of smoking. For a long time, people have known about the dangers of smoking. For a long time, people have known about the dangers of smoking. The service should help new parents learn more about caring for their baby. The service should help new parents learn more about caring for their baby. The service should help new parents learn more about caring for their baby. It is over 25 years since man's first flight into space. It is over 25 years since man's first flight into space. It is over 25 years since man's first flight into space. Many people find it difficult to admit that they need help. Many people find it difficult to admit that they need help. Many people find it difficult to admit that they need help. Shortly before an earthquake, animals are known to act in unusual ways. Shortly before an earthquake, animals are known to act in unusual ways. Shortly before an earthquake, animals are known to act in unusual ways. This policy has been criticized by some sections of society. This policy has been criticized by some sections of society. This policy has been criticized by some sections of society. Teachers are leaving their profession at an alarming rate. Teachers are leaving their profession at an alarming rate. Teachers are leaving their profession at an alarming rate.
The wearing of school uniforms is a controversial matter in some countries. The wearing of school uniforms is a controversial matter in some countries. The wearing of school uniforms is a controversial matter in some countries.
An important relationship exists between food and comfort. An important relationship exists between food and comfort. An important relationship exists between food and comfort.
Hi friends, welcome to this Duolingo English Test practice video. In this video, we're going to practice these new interactive reading questions. These questions are new on the Duolingo English Test, so I think practicing them on this video will be really helpful for you. And just in case you're new to this test, this interactive reading question goes like this. You have one passage to read like this, and you have 6 different questions to answer. The first question is complete the sentences, then complete the passage, highlight the answer, identify the idea, and title the passage. And you only have between 7 and 8 minutes to complete all of these questions, so you gotta do it pretty quickly. So this video is a practice video to help you with these questions. Of course, this is just a YouTube video, so you're not able to click next on this video to jump to the next question like on the real test. But if you want to practice that, you should visit my website, detready.com, because we have a practice platform with these new questions on it. And you can practice all of these reading questions, including this highlight the answer one, where you have to read the question and highlight the answer in the text. There is a free and a paid version for this practice platform. You can find a link somewhere down here in the description. But anyway, let's jump into this practice and let's start with passage number 1. Remember, you'll have 6 questions and between 7 and 8 minutes to complete them. If you found this practice video helpful, please write yes below in the comments. Okay, here's the reading practice number 1. Okay guys, that's it. I hope this practice was helpful. If you watched this video all the way to the end, right, I finished below in the comments. And next, watch this video because it'll help you with the other reading question, the fill in the blanks one. You can practice lots of different questions here. So I'll see you there. Bye. One of the writing questions on the Duolingo English test is to write about a photo in 1 minute. And this is challenging for a lot of students because writing about a photo is simply just hard. And you've got to do it in 1 minute, so extra hard. But there are actually just 4 simple things you need to know to describe a photo effectively. So in this video, I will show you these 4 simple things and I'll give you a bonus tip at the end. So the first thing you need to know is how to begin your answer. And I recommend you start by using a general summary where you write 1 sentence describing the photo in general. This is quite simple and a good way to start your answer. Let me show you an example of what I mean. So we'll use this photo and a general summary looks something like this. This photo shows a teacher teaching a group of young school students. Another example. This is an image of a group of students and a teacher in a modern classroom. These general summaries are a great way to begin your answer because they're fairly easy to write and it means that you can write 1 sentence quite quickly. And we usually use the present simple or present continuous to do this. There are lots of ways to begin your general summary. In these 2 examples, I used this photo shows and this is an image of. But there are more ways you can begin. Let me show you here. You can say this is a picture of, this picture shows, this image depicts. In this photograph, there is, or there are. I highly recommend that you memorize these statements and you practice typing them quickly. Remember, you only have 1 minute to do this question type, so if you practice typing these statements out quickly, then when you take your real Duolingo test, you can do it and save some valuable seconds. Now let's move on to look at how you can write some more details in your answer. To get a good score, you will need to put some details in your description. And there are a few ways to do this, so let's take a look at these now. One way to add detail to your answers is to describe the actions of the people or the subjects in the photo. Most photos will have a subject, either a person, an animal, a vehicle, something like that. Let's take an example with this photo. Here, the main subject is the teacher, so I will describe what he's doing. He is standing in front of an interactive screen and gesturing politely. I might also want to talk about the students. I could say, the students are listening carefully to what the teacher is saying. Even though this photo was taken in the past, when we describe it, we typically use the present tenses. And when describing the actions of the people or subjects, we will use the present continuous. Like in this example, I said he is standing in front of an interactive screen and gesturing politely. In this sentence, I use the present continuous tense. So describing the actions of the people or subjects in the photo is one way to go into detail, but it's not the only way. The next way is to describe the location of things. This is a great way to add detail to your answer. And to do this, you're going to want to use prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases are good to include in your answer because they are quite an advanced grammar type. Let's take a look at an example. The teacher is in front of the students who are sat in rows, and there is a large interactive screen behind him. In this example, the 2 prepositional phrases are in front of and behind. Another example, there is an interactive screen to the left of the teacher and a whiteboard directly behind him. So you can see how describing the location using prepositional phrases can add lots of details to your description. There are lots of prepositional phrases you can use. Here are a bunch of examples. I recommend you take a screenshot of this and study these and practice using them in your descriptions. But that's not all. You can also do one more thing which is quite advanced to describe your photo. And this is to make a speculation or to make a guess. So making a speculation on the photo means that you're guessing what is happening based on the photo. So for example, here is my speculation. He must be an effective teacher as the young students are focusing well on the lesson. So do I know 100% that he is an effective teacher? No, I don't. I'm just guessing or making a speculation based on the photo. But as I mentioned, your speculation or your guess should be closely related to what's happening in the photo. Here's another example. There is a large interactive screen behind the teacher that is likely being used for an educational game. Again, I don't know 100% that is being used for an educational game. I'm just making a guess or a speculation based on the evidence in the photo. There are lots of grammar structures you can use to make a speculation, and a good thing is that typically these grammar structures are considered quite advanced. So if you use them well in your answer, it could boost your score. And here are some of these grammar structures. So to make a speculation about why is something happening now, so in the present, you can use modal verbs like must, may, might, or can't be. You can also use other words and expressions. You might also want to speculate about something that's happened in the past, but affecting the present. In that case, you can use might have, must have, or could not have. These are some examples of modal verbs. There are more, but these are the basic ones. So those are things you can write about in your photo, but now I have a bonus tip for you, and it is to always try to use descriptive language, words like adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions. Using these words will give you extra points because vocabulary is on the scoring criteria. And in my examples so far, I have used lots of these words, but let me show you one more time to remind you. So this is a full answer, and the descriptive language or descriptive words are in orange. So we have young, in front of, politely, effective, well. These are all adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions, which you can use to describe your photo in more detail. Another example, here the descriptive language is modern, in front of, large, behind, educational. Again, useful descriptive words to describe a photo and boost your score for this question type. So that's how you describe a photo, but now you need to practice. So I recommend you watch this video here to see lots of photos with sample answers. This will be a great way to practice, so I'll see you in this video. Hi friends, welcome to this Duolingo English Test speaking lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to take a look at the describe a photo through speaking question type. This question type is so important because it contributes heavily to your production subscore, and I know a lot of you want to get a good score in production. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to describe a photo well through speaking. But before we begin that, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from detready.com. If you're looking for more tools to study for the Duolingo English Test, I recommend you visit our website. That's detready.com. Okay, anyway, back to this lesson. Describing a photo is not an easy thing to do in English, so I think this video is going to be so helpful. So what type of photos might you get for this question? Let's take a look at some sample ones now. There are many different types of photos on this test. Some might look like this one, or this one. Even though there are lots of types of photos, the way you describe them can be the same, which I will show you later in my tips. If you learn a strategy like I'll show you, then you don't have to worry about the type of photo you get. Let's talk more about this question and then I'll show you those tips. Here are the key points of this question type. You have 90 seconds to complete it, but you need to speak for at least 30 seconds. So the minimum requirement is 30 seconds, but I highly recommend you speak for longer. And of course, I will show you how to do that later in this video. For this question type, you have 20 seconds to prepare. Luckily, you can see the photo while speaking, so you don't have to memorize it or anything like that. And it's important to know that you cannot re-record your answer. You only have one chance to do this correctly, and it contributes to your production and conversation subscores. So those are the key points. The important ones are that you need to speak for over 30 seconds and that you cannot re-record your answer. Remember, you only have one chance at this. If you make a mistake, just continue. Don't start over again. Now let's take a look at the scoring criteria for this question type, and there are 4 main categories you need to be aware of. The first category is content. Basically, how well do you describe the photo? Next is grammar and vocabulary. Duolingo are looking for the level and variety of your grammatical structures and your vocabulary. Next is fluency, and in the Duolingo official guidebook, they say that fluency is how long you can talk for in a limited time. And lastly, we have pronunciation, which is how clearly you can speak. Knowing how you're scored is so important because now you can tailor your answers around this scoring criteria. Remember, you should describe the photo as well as you can, use a variety of grammar and vocabulary, use clear pronunciation, and speak for as long as you can. If you do all 4 of those things, you'll score very high for this question type. But now let's go into some specifics. How can you score well on this question type based on this criteria? Well, I have 5 tips for you to help you score better, and each tip is equally important, so watch this video all the way to the end from now. It will help you a lot when you do this question on the Duolingo English test. And the first tip is to help you score better on content, and the tip is don't label. So what do I mean by labeling? Well, if you look at this photograph here, if a student just labeled the photograph, then the answer would be something like this. It's a coffee shop. I see a barista. There are lots of shelves and there is one chair. If you just label the photo like I did here as an example, then you won't score high for content or grammar and vocabulary. Why? Well, you're not describing the picture fully, you're just labeling what is in it, and you're only using simple grammatical structures. So don't do that. Instead, you want to describe using descriptive language. That way you'll describe the photo better and you'll use more complex grammar and vocabulary, both of which will help you get a really good score for this question type. And here's a better example of that. This is a photo of a stylish and modern coffee shop. Behind the counter, there are several shelves that have been hung on the wall with plants, bags of coffee, and other items placed on them. An empty wooden chair is facing the counter on the left of the photo. So this example has lots of descriptive language. These words and phrases in red are what we would consider descriptive language. Things like adjectives, prepositions, and extra information to describe the photo well. It's important to remember that to get a really good score for this question, you need to use descriptive language in your answer, like in this example here. Don't just label it. If you label, you will not get a good score for this question type. Of course, describing a photo in this much detail is not easy, so you do need to practice this a lot. On top of practicing, my other tips in this video will help you a lot. So let's move on to tip number 2, which is to learn some introductory statements. Sometimes the hardest thing to do when you're answering a speaking question is actually to begin speaking. A lot of students get stuck because they don't know how to begin. So learning some introductory statements, basically sentences to introduce your answer, will be really helpful. And I have 5 for you here. You can say, this is a picture of. This photo shows. In this image there are. Or you can use more adjectives in your answer. For example, this is a stunning photograph of. You can change stunning with another adjective, like beautiful. You can also say, in this photo I can see. So here are some examples. This is a photograph of a stylish coffee shop with a barista working behind the counter. This is an image of a young girl riding a horse down a country lane. This is a photo of a highway that leads to a big urban city. And notice in these examples that we use the present simple or present continuous when describing a photo. So you've given your first sentence, that's great, but now you need to go into detail. And one good way to do that is to describe the location of things in the photo. Basically, talking about where things are in the photograph. And this is a great way to go into detail for your answer. So let's look at how you can do that now. Tip 3, what is where? And there are some ways to do this. You might want to start from left to right, or right to left, top to bottom, or bottom to top, far to near, or near to far. If you go in a logical order and stick to it, then describing where things are located in a photo becomes a lot easier. And you should also use prepositional phrases for this. To the left, to the right, on top of, above, at the top, in the center or in the middle, in the corner, at the bottom, under, beneath, underneath, or below. Here are a bunch of extra different ones you can use as well. Using these types of phrases when describing a photo will be great because you'll describe the photo in lots of detail. That'll get you a good score for content, And also, you'll get a good score for vocabulary, because if you use these phrases well, then you'll have a diverse set of vocabulary in your answer, and that's what Duolingo want to see. Let me show you how to use these in a sample answer. Behind the counter, there are several shelves that have been hung on the wall with plants, bags of coffee, and other items placed on them. In front of the shelves, a barista is hard at work, probably making a cup of coffee. The menu is written on a tall blackboard, which is to the left of the barista. Also, on the right side of the photo, there's a large coffee machine, and next to it, there are 3 other machines that are used to make coffee. As you can see, using these prepositional phrases is a great way to describe a photo because your answer becomes very descriptive. And like I said, that's what Duolingo want you to do. So that was tip number 3, talking about what is where in the photo, but that's not enough. You can't speak for 60 to 90 seconds just using this technique. You might also want to talk about who is doing what, and that's tip number 4. Who is doing what? In this tip, we want to look at the people or objects in the photo and describe what they are doing. You can use the present continuous and action verbs to do this well. So let's take a look at this photo. What are the 2 ladies in this photo doing? Here's an example answer. The woman in the navy jacket is pointing a pen at the laptop, while the lady in red is reading the information on the screen. How about this photo again? You could say, the barista is working behind the counter and waiting for customers to serve. If there are people or animals or something moving in the photo, then this becomes very easy. You just use the present continuous tense. But what if you get a photo which doesn't have an object or a person moving? What can you do then? Well, let's take a look here. If there's no actions in the photo, you should use the present simple plus an adjective. For example, the boat is stuck on the beach. As you can see here, you don't need to use complex or difficult grammar to do this well. You just need to use the present continuous or present simple tense. When we're describing a photo in English, we often just use the present tenses. Okay, now you've learned how to give an introductory statement, talk about the location of things, and talk about who is doing what. If you can do those 3 things really well, that will really help you get a better score. But there's one more thing you need to do to get the highest score, and that's use really descriptive language to add details, and that's tip number 5. Use descriptive language. Now, the first easy way to use descriptive language to add details is to use adjectives. Remember, adjectives describe nouns in more detail, and I highly recommend you use as many adjectives as you can when describing the photo. It will boost your score for vocabulary and content. Let's take a look at some examples. My simple sentence could be, this is a photo of a highway that leads to a city. Okay, that's not bad, but let's use some adjectives to describe this photo better. For example, this is a photo of a busy highway that leads to a large city. How about this example? This is a photo of a man who is giving a presentation. With some adjectives, your answer could be, this is a photo of a tall man who is giving an important presentation. Using adjectives is a fantastic way to add more details and information to your answer. And you don't need to use complex or really difficult adjectives, just simple ones will do fine. You can also use adverbs as well. Remember, adverbs modify a verb. They give more information about the verb. Let's take a look at some examples. This photo, the beautiful horses are galloping through the green field. With an adverb, you can say, the beautiful horses are quickly galloping through the green field. In this sentence, the adverb is after the be verb. But it can also come at the end of the sentence, like this. The beautiful horses are galloping through the green field quickly. Another example, this is an image of a young girl riding a horse down a country lane. With an adverb, this is an image of a young girl riding a horse carefully down a country lane. Or again at the end of the sentence. Those are 5 tips. Now let's look at a full answer to show you how it's constructed from start to finish. This is a photo of a coffee shop with a barista behind the shop counter. The barista is working, possibly making some coffee, and waiting for customers to serve. Behind the counter, there are several shelves that have been hung on the wall with plants, bags of coffee, and other items placed on them. The menu is written on the tall blackboard, which is to the left of the barista. Also, on the right side of the photo, there's a large coffee machine. And next to it, there are 3 other machines that are used to make coffee. The coffee shop's design is very stylish and natural, because the counter and the shelves are made of wood, and the chair in front of the counter is also wooden. Even though there aren't any customers present at the moment, I think it's likely a popular place for local residents and tourists to visit. Now you know how to describe a photo well through speaking, but what about through writing? This video here will help you with that. You'll learn a structure to describe a photo through writing, and I'll show you lots and lots of examples. So click here and I'll see you in this video. Bye. Hi everyone, I'm Luke, an expert Duolingo English Test teacher, and today we're going to talk about the speaking tasks. Specifically, the independent or the extended speaking task, where you have to talk about a topic for around 90 seconds. And you have to do this 3 times in the test. You also have to describe a picture. That's a different task, and if you want to find out more information about that, hit this card here. But this video is all about the extended speaking task, where you've got to talk about a topic for around 90 seconds. Usually the topics are pretty simple, things like work, study, music, art, etc. But being able to talk about one of these topics for 90 seconds fluently is quite challenging. So in today's video, I'm going to give you some top tips to help you with this task. But first, let's take a look at what you've got to do exactly. So these are the different types of speaking tasks you have to do in the Duolingo test. One task is describing a picture. I did a long video on how to do this well. Find the link in the description. Then you have 3 independent speaking tasks. 2 of these are introduced to you with written prompts, and 1 is with an oral prompt. Oral just means through listening. The written prompt looks like this. You have between 20 and 30 seconds to prepare, and you just click that Record Now button at the bottom when you're ready. It says that you should speak for at least 30 seconds about the questions below. And while that's true, I highly recommend that you speak for longer. So in this task, you actually have 90 seconds to answer this question, and like I mentioned, I strongly recommend that you speak for at least 80 seconds. Because at the end of the day, this is an English test where you're supposed to show off your English. So the more you talk, the more chance you have to use better vocabulary or advanced grammatical structures, both of which will help you with your overall score. So definitely keep this in mind. Try to speak for at least 80 seconds. So when you're here, after 30 seconds, this next box in the corner will light up, so you can click that as soon as you've finished. So that was the written prompt, but you also have an oral prompt. This is a lot harder. So what happens here is that you actually get given a question or a prompt through listening. So you have to listen and respond correctly to the question you hear. Of course, this tests both your listening and speaking skills. Again, for this task, you have 90 seconds to speak. And you can replay the question up to 3 times. So if you want to listen to it again, just click this speaker button. But remember, you only have 3 times to do this. And when you've answered the question fully, just click next and you can go on to the next question. So just to remind you, you have 3 extended speaking tasks in this test, 2 with a written prompt and 1 with an oral prompt. But the way you answer should be the same. The oral prompt is just there to test your listening skills and to check how well you respond to a listening question. Okay, so now let's take a look at my top tips for answering this task in the best way possible. Okay, my top tip number 1 is to answer the prompts. So on test day, when you're doing this task, you'll get a prompt like this. Talk about a book you recently read. This is the main topic. And then you'll have 4 questions to guide you through your answer. I highly recommend that you go through all of these questions, because talking for 90 seconds without these prompts can be very challenging. So you can just simply go question to question to question to question and answering them with lots of detail, and that should take you to 90 seconds. I've seen a lot of teachers talking about these prompts and how students should just ignore them and talk about their own story, but to be honest, I think it's much easier just to answer these questions. So I know that's a really simple tip, but sometimes the simple tips are the best. So be sure to answer those prompts. Tip number 2 is to remember to always answer the questions, but then expand on your answer. Again, remember that this is an English proficiency test, so you have to show off your English. So you shouldn't just answer the question in a simple way, you should answer and expand. So how can you expand? Well, you can elaborate, that means talk more about your answer. You can give your opinion, or you can give someone else's opinion, and you can also give some examples. So I know this is another simple tip, but you'd be surprised how many students just give a simple answer, and they think that's enough, but it's not. Remember, you always have to give a simple answer, but then expand on it. Because you want to show the examiner, or in this case the computer, that you're really good at English. So remember, answer and expand. Answer and expand. So let me show you an example. So let's say this is our topic. Talk about a book that you read recently. And the prompts are, what was the title? What was it about? How did you first hear of it? What did you like or dislike about it? So for the first question, what was the title? This is an example of how you can answer a simple question like this, but expand on your answer to show off your English. So this is my example. A book that I've read recently, which really inspired me, was called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, by the famous physicist Dr. Feynman. This book is a collection of personal stories, both hilarious and thought-provoking, from Dr. Feynman's life. So let's take a look at this. The question, what was the title, is a really simple question, and a very simple answer would just be, a book that I've read recently was called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. If I just stop there, I'm only answering the question, but I'm not elaborating. So as you can see in this example, all of the parts in green are the parts which I elaborated. Remember, elaborate means to give more information. So the parts that I elaborated, I said, which really inspired me. And then I added a little bit more detail about the book. So this is a very simple way to elaborate about this topic, the book. You can talk about the author, or about the genre of the book, and what were your reactions to the book. So this is a good way of expanding the simple question, what was the title? Now let's take a look at the second question, which is, what was it about? So this is also an example answer, and again I elaborated. So let me show you. This book is mainly about all the life lessons that Dr. Feynman learned in his amazing life. For instance, do things that you love as best as you can. As this book is a collection of stories from his life rather than a novel, it doesn't really have a plot. Each chapter covers one important part of his life, such as his time at university or the time when he met Albert Einstein, which, in my opinion, was the most fascinating chapter. So in this section, in order to elaborate, I gave examples. I said, for instance, do things that you love as best as you can. And at the bottom, I said, such as his time at university or the time when he met Albert Einstein. So here, such as provides examples to what I said earlier. Each chapter covers one important part of his life. So as you can see from these two, adding examples is a great and easy way to elaborate. Then the last part, which is in purple, is a way to elaborate by showing your opinion. There are lots of different phrases you can use to share your opinion. In my opinion is the simplest one, but you could also say, as far as I'm concerned, or in my point of view. These are just some examples. So I hope this showed you some good ways to expand on your simple answers. Now let's take a look at tip number 3, which is transition words. Using transition words will help your answer to sound more fluent and more coherent. And there are lots of different transition words you can use. If you want to move on to the next question, it's a good idea to use one of these transition words. You can say, okay, turn into the next question. Moving on to question 3. Or, as for question 3. These are simple and smooth ways to transition from question to question. You can also use these transition words when you are giving your answer. So you can signpost your ideas by saying first, second, third, or firstly, secondly, thirdly. When you want to give more information, you can say what's more, furthermore, or moreover. And when you're about to finish your answer, you can say finally. Also, if you forgot to mention something important, but would like to mention it at the end, you can say, one more thing I'd like to talk about is, and then talk about your idea. So remember, it's important to use transition words like these because it'll make your answer a lot more smooth and make your answer sound a lot more organized. So practice using these. Okay, moving on to my final tip, which is tip number 4. This tip is very useful, and it is to look out for question triggers. So what is a question trigger? Well, different questions have words which require a certain type of answer. So here are 6 common questions you might see on this speaking task on the Duolingo English Test, and the words in green are the trigger. They are triggers because they should trigger a certain answer or a certain response. And that response usually has a specific grammar structure you should use. So let's take a look. The first one, how did you first hear of this book? So of course the word did is a past tense, so when you answer this question, you have to respond using one of the past tenses. So the past simple, the past continuous, past perfect, used to. That one's quite straightforward. The next question, will you read a similar book? This one refers to the future. So again, you have to respond using one of the correct future tenses. Will, going to, the present continuous, the future perfect, or the future continuous. Be sure to use the correct tense for the idea that you are talking about. Now they get a little bit more tricky. So this question is quite common. How long have you been doing something? For this, you need to respond using the present perfect continuous. The present continuous is have plus been plus a verb with ing. And we use this to talk about an ongoing action that started in the past. So if a question says, how long have you been doing something? You should respond like this. I've been doing this for 3 years, 4 years, or whatever. But you have to respond using the correct tense. So pay attention to the question. 4 is particularly difficult, and a lot of students lose points by answering this question wrong. This question is a hypothetical question. They usually come in the would form. So would you recommend this book? So to answer this correctly, you have to respond in a hypothetical way. So you could say something like, yes, I would recommend this book because I thought it was really inspiring. So if a question has would in it, you shouldn't answer using the simple past. So for this question, would you recommend the book to someone? You shouldn't say, yes, I did, or yes, I will. You should respond in a hypothetical way. For example, yes, I would recommend this book because I found it very interesting. Or, no, I don't think I would recommend this book because it wasn't very good. You could also use if sentences here too, because if sentences are hypothetical. So a simple answer would be, sure, if someone asked me about this book, I would recommend it. So definitely pay attention for the would questions. And the last 2 are opinion questions. For example, why questions, or what do you or what did you like or dislike about something? These questions expect you to share your opinion, so you should use opinion phrases like, in my opinion, from my point of view, as far as I'm concerned. Let's see how this is used in a real example. So let's use the same prompt as earlier. Talk about a book that you read recently. And we'll answer this question. How did you first hear of it? So I could say, turning to the next question, the first time I heard of this book was on a podcast where 2 people were talking about the most influential books that they've ever read. Even though I hadn't heard of Dr. Feynman then, the way they talked about him was amazing. So as soon as I finished listening to the podcast, I went straight out to the bookstore to buy the book. So as you can see here, the question, how did you first hear of it, required an answer using the past tense. But I started off by saying, turning to the next question. Remember, this was a transition word. This is a good way to move from one question to the next one. And then throughout my answer, I use the different past tenses. Heard is a simple past tense. Were talking about is the past continuous. Hadn't heard was the past perfect. And talked, finished, and went are the past simple. Definitely practice using all the different past tenses in a story like this because it'll help you get a higher score in grammatical accuracy and complexity. Okay, so those were some of my top tips for answering the 90-second extended speaking on the Duolingo English test. Just to remind you, they were: answer the prompts, answer and expand, use transition words, and look out for question triggers. And now it's your turn. I'm going to give you a question prompt and 90 seconds to answer. This is a real question from the Duolingo English test. Definitely try to answer this question through speaking for 90 seconds, but if you want me to give you some feedback, write your answer below in the comments and I'll check. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. So how did you find that? 90 seconds is quite long, isn't it? But I hope my top tips helped you to answer this question fluently and with a lot more information in order to help you get a better score. Okay, and that's it from me today. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful and I'll see you next time. Take care. Hi friends, this video is all about the listen then speak question type on the Duolingo English test. You know, the one that looks like this. So this question type is really hard because it requires you to listen and understand a prompt or a question and then respond through speaking. You have to speak for at least 30 seconds and you have 90 seconds in total. And it's hard because it involves those two skills, listening and then speaking. And that's why I've made this video to help you. In this video, we're going to do three things. Firstly, we'll take a look at the key points of this question type. This will help you to understand what this question is all about. Then I'm going to give you some really useful tips. And at the end, we're going to do lots and lots of practice and I'll show you a full sample answer. Okay, we will jump into the key points in just one moment, but I want to say that if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from detready.com. Visit our website to find information about the Duolingo English test. We have some courses to help you, specifically with writing, and we have a practice platform. When you sign up to our practice platform, you can practice all of the different question types on the Duolingo English test, and you can see the answers immediately. This, of course, will be greatly helpful for you when you're studying for the Duolingo English test. Okay, back to this lesson. Like I said, firstly, we'll take a look at the key points of this question type. So let's do that right now. Okay, so let's take a look at the key points. The thing you've got to do is, of course, listen to a prompt and then respond through speaking. And you can listen to the prompt 3 times within 20 seconds. So we use the word prompt here because the prompt can either be a question, something like, what do you think about blah blah, or it can be a statement, like, describe your favorite childhood memory. And you get to listen to this prompt 3 times, as long as it's within 20 seconds. After 20 seconds is up, then you have to begin speaking. So I strongly recommend that you listen 3 times, even if you do think you understand it the first or second time. After the 20 seconds is up, you can't listen again. And of course, it's not shown in writing since this is a listen then speak question. So it's really important that you are able to understand the prompt within those 20 seconds given to you. Okay, there are more key points, of course. Okay, the next key point is that it's really important that you actually respond or answer the prompt given to you, because task relevance is on the scoring criteria. So task relevance refers to how well you actually answer the question or the prompt given. If you do talk about a different topic, then you'll lose a lot of points for task relevance, because it shows that you weren't able to understand the question. So make sure before you start speaking that you really do understand exactly what was said, and that your response, your answer, is related to that topic. So when you're answering, you have 90 seconds in total to answer, but importantly, you need to speak for at least 30 seconds. So the rule is that you should speak for at least 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, you can click on the next button to go to the next question. However, I recommend you try to speak much longer than that, at least for 60 seconds. Again, if you take a look at the scoring criteria for the production questions on the Duolingo English test, fluency is one of the points they mention. And one aspect of fluency is about how long you can speak for. So if you can speak for longer than 30 seconds, let's say 60 to 70 seconds, then you will get a better score for fluency. So just try to speak as much as you can when you're answering these prompts. Now, according to the Duolingo test guidebook, which is available on their website, you only get this once on the test. Okay, so this one's a bit interesting. So in the Duolingo test guidebook, they say that you should only get this question once on the test. However, when I took the test a few months ago, I actually had it twice. And I've seen that a couple of my students on my Facebook group said the same thing. They had it twice, not once. So officially, you should only have it once, but I think sometimes you can get it twice. So just be prepared for that. And this contributes to your conversation and production subscores. And lastly, this is important, this question type is actually not on the practice test. Interestingly, this question type is not on the practice test. If you want to practice speaking on the official practice test, then you only can practice the read then respond one, but not this listen and respond one. I don't know why, but it's not, and you need to know that. And like I mentioned, this question contributes to your conversation and production subscore, and I know a lot of students struggle to get a good score in production, so if you can do this question type really well, it'll surely be helpful for you. And I've got some really useful tips to help you do well, so let's take a look at these tips now. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important that you make sure that you understand the prompt before you begin speaking. And in order to understand, I strongly suggest that you do listen 3 times, even if you've understood it the first time. So I think that one's really important. Even if you understood the prompt the first time, I strongly suggest you listen 3 times. Because when you begin speaking, you can't listen again. So if you've listened 3 times, it means you're much more likely to remember what the prompt was and all the little sections of it. Because sometimes the prompt is quite long and it has different questions within it. So I really recommend you listen 3 times. Next one, your answer must be directly related to the prompt. So I did mention this earlier, but I'll say it again. Task relevance is on the criteria. So it's really important you actually respond to the prompt and not speak about a different topic or go away from the prompt at all. Try your best to make your answer to be as closely related to the prompt as possible. That'll help you get a better score for task relevance. Next up, make sure to use a range of vocabulary and grammar, and you can use linking phrases to increase your fluency. I made a whole video on spoken linking phrases you can use for this question type. You can find that video up here or click on the link below in the description. Linking phrases are useful because it helps make your answers sound much smoother and more natural. So I recommend you watch that video and study the different phrases in that video. Next up, speak for as long as you can. This will increase your fluency score. And lastly, practice often. So it's quite hard to practice this question type since it's not on the practice test. So watch this video all the way to the end and get practice with the questions I show you. And if you want more practice, I recommend you use my practice platform. When you sign up to my practice platform, you get unlimited practice on all of the different question types on the Duolingo English test, including this listen and speak one. You can practice listening and responding to lots of different prompts, and you can see sample answers. On top of that, you can actually listen back to your answer and then compare it to a sample answer. This will be great practice for you, not only for this question type, but all of the others as well. So if this sounds good to you, you can find links to this practice platform below in the description. Anyway, let's get some practice done in this video. We'll start off with listening. So I've prepared 5 listening prompts for you. I'll play each one 3 times, and I want you to listen and fill in the blanks which will be on the screen. This will be helpful because you can check how well you understand these prompts. And after these 5 are done, we'll do a full speaking practice where I'll show you a prompt, give you 90 seconds to answer, and then show you my sample answer. I'm sure this will be really helpful for you, so make sure you watch the whole video and do all the practice questions here. Okay, well, let's get started with the 5 listening ones first. Remember, your job is to listen and fill in the blanks.
Describe a time when you told your friend the truth. What was the truth? What was your friend's reaction? Describe a time when you told your friend the truth. What was the truth? What was your friend's reaction? Describe a time when you told your friend the truth. What was the truth? What was your friend's reaction? Talk about a job that you would not like to do in the future. What is the job? Why wouldn't you like to do it? Talk about a job that you would not like to do in the future. What is the job? Why wouldn't you like to do it? Talk about a job that you would not like to do in the future. What is the job? Why wouldn't you like to do it?
Talk about a festival that is celebrated in your country. What is it? Why is it important? Talk about a festival that is celebrated in your country. What is it? Why is it important? Talk about a festival that is celebrated in your country. What is it? Why is it important? What school subjects do you think are the most important to study? Why do you think so? What school subjects do you think are the most important to study? Why do you think so? What school subjects do you think are the most important to study? Why do you think so?
Describe an art exhibition you have seen. When did you go there? Where was it? What was it like? Describe an art exhibition you have seen. When did you go there? Where was it? What was it like? Describe an art exhibition you have seen. When did you go there? Where was it? What was it like?
So those were 5 listening prompts. Were you able to understand them? Let me know below in the comments. Now let's jump into speaking. So I'll give you another listening prompt, which you can listen to 3 times, and then I'll give you 90 seconds to speak out your answer. After the 90 seconds is up, I'll show you my sample answer. I hope this is helpful for you. If you think it is, write yes below in the comments. Okay then, well, let's get started with this. Remember, your job is to listen and then speak for as long as you can. Try to speak for around 60 to 70 seconds.
Talk about the differences between working for a big company and working for a small company. Which do you prefer? Talk about the differences between working for a big company and working for a small company. Which do you prefer? Talk about the differences between working for a big company and working for a small company. Which do you prefer?
When choosing a company to work for, there are few things more important to consider than the size of the company. Typically, big companies offer higher salaries and have a bigger corporate ladder to climb, which could lead to more responsibilities and promotions. On the other hand, at a small company, an individual can make more of an impact. At small companies, your ideas and hard work have a bigger impact on the long-term success of the company, which can feel very rewarding. These are some differences between working for a big company and a small one. I definitely want to work for a small company when I graduate from university.
Okay, how was that? Well, now let's listen to a sample answer. I want you to look at this sample answer and compare it with yours. And that's it. Well done for finishing this whole video. If you did finish, write "I finished" below in the comments. I'm always curious who actually finishes these really long videos. And if you think this video is helpful, I recommend you watch this one here next or this one here. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi everyone, I'm Luke, an expert Duolingo English Test teacher, and today we're going to take a look at a really difficult task on this test, and it is the 5-minute write-in task. This task is really hard because you've got to be able to write logically and coherently, you've got to respond and answer the question directly, and you've got to show off all of your grammar and vocabulary in just 5 minutes. When I talk to students that have taken the Duolingo English test, I've noticed a really common feature, and that is that their production score typically is the lowest score on their test. The production sub-score includes your speaking and writing, and I think that students struggle to get a good score on production because they're not able to answer this question type well. So if that's you, this video is going to be so helpful for you. We're going to go over some of the key points of the 5-minute write-in task, and then I'm going to give you some really useful tips to help you to organize your answer well and write with a logical and coherent structure. But before I start, if you think this video is useful for you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me a lot. Okay, well, let's get started by looking at some of the key points of this write-in task. When you take the Duolingo English test and you have the write-in task, it looks something like this. You have a question or a prompt on the left, and you have to write your answer in the box on the right. It says that you must write at least 50 words. If you are not able to write 50 words, then you will get the lowest score on this task. However, as I'm going to mention later on, I think you should be writing a lot more than 50 words. Luckily, on the Duolingo English test, they only give you this question type once in the whole test. There is another write-in task, that is the describe an image task. You'll have that 3 times during the test, but for this 5-minute writing, you only have it once. And you have 5 minutes to complete. This is incredibly short for a write-in task, which means you need to be very prepared before you take the test that you're going to be asked to think quickly and respond in writing quickly without planning. It's hard, but you can do it. So those were the key 3 points of this write-in task. But there are other things you should consider, such as what style of writing are you going to be asked to do? And of course, how are you marked? What is the criteria? So let's take a look at that now. You can find information on the Duolingo English Test website about all of the tasks you are going to do. For this write-in task, this is what they show us. It says that the independent tasks require test takers to describe, recount, or make an argument. These require the test takers to demonstrate more discursive knowledge of writing in addition to language knowledge. So there are 2 things to pay attention to here. Firstly is the style of writing you're going to be asked to do. There are 3 styles. Describe, recount. Recount just means to talk about your experiences, or you will be asked to make an argument. When you make an argument, you usually have to put forward some ideas for or against a topic. And you are scored in these important ways. First, grammatical accuracy and complexity. This means, are you writing correct sentences and are you using a range of grammatical structures, simple structures and more difficult structures? The next point is lexical sophistication and diversity. This is all to do with your vocabulary. Are you using correct words and a range of different vocabulary items? Third point is task relevance. This simply means, were you able to answer the question correctly? Fourth point, which I think is very interesting, is length. So for this task, like I mentioned earlier, you must write at least 50 words. But if you look here, you can see that length is a part of the scoring criteria. To me, this indicates that you should be trying to write as much as you can, as long as it stays coherent and cohesive. Even though 5 minutes is really short, it is long enough for you to write a full paragraph, and a full paragraph can be anywhere from 50 to 150 words. And the last one is fluency. Now, we normally think of fluency in terms of speaking, but in terms of writing, we can think of it as cohesion. That means, are you able to write your ideas smoothly in a logical order? That makes it easy to follow for the reader. This is what we consider as fluency in writing. As you can see, this question type is not easy at all. It tests your writing skills, your language and grammar knowledge, and also your thinking skills. And it's made especially difficult because you have to do all of that in just 5 minutes. I get a lot of questions on my Facebook group about this writing task, specifically to do with how to organize or how to structure your answer. So that's what we're going to do now. I have some couple tips to help you to answer this question logically and to make sure that you're able to get the best score you can get. So now let's take a look at these tips. So my first tip is really simple, but it's one that a lot of students struggle with, and it is simply to answer the question fully. So what does this mean? Well, firstly, let's quickly review what I showed you earlier. When you get your writing question, you will be asked to do one of these three things: either describe, recount, or make an argument. So it's quite important that you're able to recognize what type of writing you have to do. Now let's take a look at a couple examples. So let's say that this is your writing question. The question goes like this: a university plans to develop a new research center in your country. Some people want a center for business research, while others want a center for research in agriculture. Which of these two kinds of research centers would you recommend and why? So based on this, do you think that you're going to have to describe, recount, or make an argument? Well, this is an example of a make an argument question. Basically, you have to choose one of the options, a business center or an agriculture center, and you have to say why you think so. That means you have to make an argument for one option. So while you're reading this question, you have to think quickly, which one do I think is better? And then I want you to think of 2 reasons why you think so. Those 2 reasons will be the main body of your essay. How about this question type here? It says, in general, people are living longer today. Discuss some of the implications of this phenomenon. Here, do you have to make an argument? Do you have to recount? Or do you have to describe? Well, here you're asked to describe the implications. You're not making an argument for something. You have to describe the implications of the fact that people are living longer. So here you need to think about either the effects or changes that this phenomenon, people are living longer, have on society. And you have to describe them. So for this, I think you should describe at least 2 implications and provide examples or further information to support your ideas. Here is the third example. Films can tell us a lot about the country where they were made. What have you learned about another country from watching its movies? So is this an argument essay, a descriptive essay, or is it a recount? Well, as you've guessed, this is actually a recount, because this essay prompt is asking you to talk about your experiences. What exactly have you learned about another country from its movies? So, you're talking about your experience. To answer this question, you would pick one country, and again, at least 2 things you have learned from its movies, and provide examples of those things you've learned. So that was tip number 1. It is really important that you're able to quickly identify what type of writing you're being asked to do. Are you being asked to make an argument, describe something, or recount, which is to talk about your experience? It's important to be able to identify quickly because task relevance is part of the criteria, and the way you write will change depending on the type of writing you're being asked to do. Okay, now let's take a look at tip number 2, which is how to organize your answer. So tip number 2 is by far the most important here, and it is organizing your answer. I think it's better to write this whole answer as one paragraph, and your paragraph should include an introduction, some supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. You shouldn't forget that the Duolingo English Test is an academic English test. That's why lots of universities accept it. So these universities want to know that you're able to write in an academic and professional style. And being able to write a logical and correct paragraph is a part of this academic writing style. And these 3 features are key ingredients of a good paragraph. Okay, so what should you write in your introduction? Well, your introduction is simply a topic sentence. So what is a topic sentence? Well, it is the first sentence of a paragraph, and it tells the reader what the paragraph is about. This is really important because the reader needs to be able to understand very quickly what your whole paragraph is going to say. In addition to this, it will inform your supporting sentences. And your topic sentence states clearly your position or your opinion. This is particularly true in argumentative writing. So let's take a look at an example topic sentence. Let's say this is our question. Some people believe that they should keep all the money they earn and not pay tax to the state. Do you agree or disagree? So the first thing you need to recognize that in this question type, they want you to make an argument. Do you agree that people should keep all their money, or do you disagree? Your topic sentence for argumentative writing should state clearly your opinion. So this is what I wrote. I disagree with the statement that individuals should keep all the money they earn and not pay taxes for 2 main reasons. So, do you think this is a good topic sentence? I think it's pretty good for 2 reasons. Firstly, I told the reader exactly what the paragraph is about. Secondly, I gave my opinion right from the start, so it's very clear what I think. And thirdly, I included a controlling idea. The controlling idea part is for 2 main reasons. So why is this a controlling idea? Simply, the reader now expects that I will discuss 2 reasons to support my topic sentence. The controlling idea shows the reader exactly how my paragraph will be organized from now on. So this is an example topic sentence. Now let's take a look at supporting sentences. So what are supporting sentences? Well, they explain and they develop the topic sentence. They discuss the topic sentence by explaining the main ideas and discussing those more fully. Supporting sentences usually include reasons, examples, facts, results, statistics, or anything else that proves your ideas are true. So let me show you an example. My topic sentence for this essay is what we just discussed. I disagree with the statement that individuals should keep all the money they earn and not pay taxes for 2 main reasons. Okay, so that's my topic sentence. Now I need to support my topic sentence by discussing this topic and explaining my ideas fully. So my supporting sentence looks like this. First and foremost, taxpayer money collected by the government is used to fund basic amenities and public services, such as running water, schools, and hospitals. So my first supporting sentence is clearly related to my topic sentence, and it provides further information to support my topic sentence. You could also include some more information, just like this. It's important to remember that without taxpayer money, we would not have such basic services and our lives would be worse off as a result. So those were an example of a topic sentence and one supporting sentence. Usually in an essay you will have more than one supporting sentence. For the supporting sentences, it's really important to know that they should be related to your topic sentence. This provides unity to your paragraph and makes your ideas sound a lot more logical. So be careful and make sure that your topic sentence and supporting sentences are related. I've just shown you a small example, but when you do your real essay, you can include as many supporting sentences as you need. Okay, now let's take a look at the third point of a good paragraph, and that is the concluding sentence. For this writing task in the Duolingo English Test, I believe it's important to include a concluding sentence. So what is a concluding sentence? Well, a concluding sentence does these three things. It is used to signal the end of the paragraph. It tells the reader the important points to remember. And importantly, it is often a paraphrase of the topic sentence. Your topic sentence and your concluding sentence should be closely related. For the same topic, this is my concluding sentence. In conclusion, even though many people argue that we should not pay taxes, based on the reasons discussed, I believe taxation is vital in order to maintain a high standard of living. Remember, in my topic sentence, I said that I disagree with the statement that people should not pay taxes. Here, in my concluding sentence, I basically say the same thing. And I said that taxation is vital in order to maintain a high standard of living. This is related to my supporting sentence, where I talked about the basic amenities that taxation provides. So as you can see, the concluding sentence is linked to the topic sentence and the supporting sentences. Okay, now let me put all of this together into one paragraph and show you how it's structured. In this paragraph, I've also included more supporting sentences, so we'll go through it together and I'll highlight some good points from this paragraph. I strongly disagree with the statement that individuals should not pay taxes to the state for two main reasons. First and foremost, taxpayer money collected by the government is used to fund basic amenities and public services, such as running water, schools, and hospitals. It's important to remember that without taxpayer money, we would not have access to such basic services and our lives would be worse off as a result. Additionally, taxes help stabilize the economy. Through taxes, the government is able to pay off debts and invest in the country, which, in turn, leads to a more stable and prosperous place to live. In conclusion, even though many people argue that we should not pay taxes, based on the reasons discussed, I believe taxation is vital in order to maintain a high standard of living. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good paragraph. It's not perfect, of course, but it's realistic to write a paragraph like this within 5 minutes. So now I'll go through some of the good points of this paragraph. Okay, so firstly, the introduction and topic sentence is clear, like I discussed earlier, and I stated my opinion clearly right at the start. I think this is important to do as one of the marking criteria was task relevance. So this task is asking, do I agree or do I disagree? In my topic sentence, I clearly answered that already by saying I strongly disagree. I also use transition words in this paragraph to signal to the reader when I'm moving on to a new idea. These transition words are the words in green here. So we had first and foremost. First and foremost signal that I'm going to talk about my first idea and actually my most important idea. Additionally is used to signal that I will talk about another idea related to the topic. And in conclusion, of course, signals that I'm about to conclude my paragraph. It's important to use transition words like these when you're writing your paragraph. The third point I want to highlight is that I included 2 supporting ideas with additional information. These 2 supporting ideas are very closely related to my topic sentence, which is very important to do. The 2 ideas are underlined. The first one is to fund basic amenities and public services, and the second idea is to help stabilize the economy. In order to provide more information to my supporting ideas, I provided examples, things like running water, schools and hospitals. And I discussed the implications, which in turn leads to a more stable and prosperous place to live. And the fourth good point is that I included a concluding sentence which summarized my topic sentence and was closely linked to my supporting ideas. Remember to include a concluding sentence when you're doing your paragraph. This video was all about the best way you can organize and structure your writing for this writing task. This task is particularly difficult, but if you have a structure in mind and you know how to write a good paragraph, that will make your life so much easier. And before you take the Duolingo English test, make sure you practice this type of writing really often and give yourself just 5 minutes to do so. Don't forget, you need to include a topic sentence, supporting sentences which are related to your topic sentence, and a concluding sentence as well. I'm going to make more videos on writing for this Duolingo English test soon. So if you want that, please write yes below in the comments or give me some ideas of things I can make videos about. And that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Don't take the Duolingo English test until you've watched this video, because I'm going to share with you the 7 things you should not do if you want to avoid getting disqualified and to pass with flying colours. Some of these are rules you must follow, and others are just my suggestions to help you score higher on this test. So let's jump right into it. Number 1, don't look away from the screen. Make sure you keep your eyes on the screen for most of the test. The Duolingo English test is a high-stakes exam, and Duolingo want to make sure that test takers don't cheat. Because if people are able to cheat, then the test is basically worthless. So even if it feels natural for you to look away when you're thinking or when you're speaking, try not to. Try to make sure you're focused on your screen or your webcam for the whole test. During the writing questions, you are allowed to look down at the keyboard, but try not to stare completely at the keyboard for the whole time. Number 2, don't forget to prep. To score high on the Duolingo English test, you need to prepare. Now, I know that the Duolingo test looks a lot friendlier than the other exams like the IELTS or TOEFL, but even so, preparation is essential if you want to get a really high score, especially, in my opinion, for the speaking and writing questions. So how can you prepare? Well, I've made over 100 videos focusing on the Duolingo English test, so you can study with those for free. I know 100 is a lot, so I recommend that you pick a particular question type and then search through my videos to focus on preparing for that question type. Do 1 question type a day. There are also other YouTube creators that make great content, so study with all of us. So YouTube's a great way to study for free, but if you would like to study in a more organized way, then you can check my website, detready.com. Here we have a production score course, which takes you through step by step how to answer the speaking and writing questions, and there's lots of PDFs for you to download and study with. But if you just want to simply practice, then I recommend using our practice platform. This is an interactive platform where you can practice the question types just like on the real test and check your answers immediately. So you have YouTube videos, a full production course, and a practice platform to help you to do well on this test. Don't forget to put in the work, because that will give you the best chance at acing this exam. Number 3, don't even think about memorizing an answer. So this one is for the speaking and writing questions. Some test takers in the past have used a memorized answer to answer the speaking and writing questions. And if you do that, you'll likely get an email like this saying that you were disqualified and you could not get a certified result. Of course, we all understand that memorizing an answer before you take the test would make the exam a lot easier for you, but you can't do that. The speaking and writing questions are there to test your natural and spontaneous responses to the questions you're given. They are not designed to test your ability to memorize answers. On top of that, you need to answer exactly what the questions ask you. So if you memorize an answer and it's not related to the question, then you won't get a certified score. You'll get an email like this saying that your exam was uncertified and you were disqualified. Number 4, don't allow anyone in your room. Make sure you are completely alone when you're taking the test. It's quite simple, but of course in reality it could be challenging, especially if you live with lots of people. But the rule is you need to be alone. If Duolingo suspect that there is someone else in the room, then you will get disqualified. And since this is a serious rule to break, you might not be allowed to take the test ever again. So make sure you're in the room alone, and also make sure the room is quiet. Ask your family members or friends to be quiet for that 1 hour you're taking the test. After that, throw a huge party or whatever you want to do, but while you're taking the test, make sure you are alone. 6, don't ignore the rules. I've talked about a few of the main rules already in this video, but there are a few more, so go onto the Duolingo Test website and find out about these rules. Don't ignore them. You can find the rules if you go to the Duolingo Test homepage and download the readiness guide. That readiness guide has all of the rules and some extra tips to help you prepare for the exam. You can also go to the FAQ section on the Duolingo Test website and find a list of rules there. There's a link to both of these below in the description, but make sure you read them and understand them before you take the test. And the last one is don't forget to ask for help. This online test is quite new and a lot of test takers have questions about it, some technical or some about preparation. If you have a technical question, something to do with your computer for example, then head over to the Duolingo Test website. At the bottom right, click on Help, and here you can chat with a member of the DET support team. For all technical questions, definitely head over to the Duolingo website and ask their support team. They are there to help you. But if you have any study or preparation questions, then visit my Facebook group. We have over 90,000 members and they are all very supportive. So ask your questions and get guidance from the members plus from myself. We will be very happy to assist you. So join the Facebook group. There is a link below in the description. Now you need to learn how to effectively prepare for the Duolingo English test, and I recommend you watch this video here for that. It will guide you through a solid preparation plan to get you ready for your exam. Okay, thanks a lot, and I'll see you there.